Excellent. This is going to work. Okay. Perfect. So I was telling my dad about this. I said, I'm going to do this thing at the art museum. He's in Pittsburgh. There was a bad connection on the phone. And he said, "You're finally going to be in an art museum?" More on him later. So here's what I would love to do today. Today, I'd love to talk about three things. The first is robots, because that's the theme. If I don't talk about that, I get in lots of trouble. The next thing is monsters. And I want to talk about that as well. And these are all connected for me. And the last thing is improv. So one of these things is not like the other, I suppose. And the reason why I'm going to do all of this, really, is to share a couple of things. One is hopefully these stories and experiences and things that you'll be doing in here, hint, you will be doing things in here, will just help you in your creative process or in the way you think about, in particular, how you put the things that you make out into the world. These have just been experiments and things that I've been playing with for a long time now. 1,720 as of yesterday I've made of these robots. And we'll talk about that and see how they impact. But a lot of experimenting. And all under sort of one simple idea, I think. And it's this. It's this idea of seeing everything as an offer. And this is language that comes from the world of improv. And as we talk about improv and play with improv, you'll kind of see where this resonates. But it's the thing that this idea, the simple idea, is the thing that sort of binds all of these things together for me. So we're going to have a bit of a journey and a play and a mess around. And in service of this idea, instead of having to talk about it, the only way to really understand it is to do something with it. So we are going to play. Yes, we are. And as Celia said, I do a lot of work in organizations. So I do work in businesses and in companies with brands and individuals. And oftentimes they hear this improv word, and then they get told they have to show up and do it. So I don't get people like you who actually are here because you want to be. Sometimes I get people that show up because they've been told they have to be. And so if you know that improv is happening, and you sort of are like, oh, wait a minute. Usually I get audiences that are very different than you. I get audiences that are filled with two emotions, really. Just dread and fear. And if that's what you have, if some of you may have that, because you saw improv somewhere in here, if that's what you're experiencing or it might be coming up for you, tough luck, man. We are locking the doors, and we're just going to do this. So on the way in, you got this sheet of paper. And it says, it asks you to write 3 favorites down on this sheet of paper, really big. So like if you held it up across the room, someone else could see it. Does everyone have that? And I'll ask that question, and there'll be a lot of rustling. So go ahead and do your rustling. But access that piece of paper, if you would. That'd be great. So we're going to do something with that now. And here's what we're going to do. We are going to play a game. It's called 3 Favorites. And I'm not going to tell you why we're doing this. I'm not going to go, here's why this is going to be an experience that's going to be relevant for your business and your life and your afterlife. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to do something, and then we'll talk about it, because I think that's kind of the best way to learn is by doing something. And to help me with this, and to introduce him, here's my wonderful colleague, Beau Brousseau. You can give Beau a hand, because you gave me one. That'd be great. Thank you, Beau. All right. So Beau is one of our lead facilitators at On Your Feet, and he's going to help me with this piece, too. So here's what you're going to do. First thing you're going to do with your sheet of paper is you're going to become a human billboard with it. And we're going to have this sort of massive, micro, non-injury-based speed date that's going to happen in here. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. In the next 60 seconds, I would like you to see as many of these as you can in this audience by micro speed dating them. So you can do things like, hey, what do you got? Great, okay, that's cool. Next, boom. And just keep going. So if you can't move around, just kind of rotate around and do that. I'm going to do a shrill, harsh, obnoxious whistle to stop you, and then you'll keep doing it anyways, and then I'll whistle again. But then we'll do the next phase of this. Make sense? Great. Go. Speed date. Freeze. Right where you are, freeze. Here's what I like you to do. Next step, and you can do this silently because you'll be able to communicate just with your eyes and your hands and your gestures. Just gently grab a partner. Someone right next to you, they are your partners. Just identify them as your partner. Good. That's what we're going to do now. We're going to take the things that are on your list, and you're going to combine them with things on your partner's list to come up with made up, non-existent, if they exist in the world, they don't count. Non-existent businesses or services that do not exist in the world. So, go! No reason to demo. I know. All right, just freeze where you are. Awesome. So here's what we know. You could probably just do this all day. Yeah, I know, it's really fun, but I'd love to hear some of these. Yes, what do you have?
Morning and found time and doing nothing. And we decided that a hotel that instead of facilitating meetings and connecting and everything, it facilitates doing nothing.
Yes, of course. It's great. Yes.
Along those lines, we both enjoy food and laying around and watching television, gardening, so we combined a service called bed service. You stay in bed, they can bring you breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and take care of it.
You just never get out of bed. Bed service. Yes, go ahead. Way back there.
So we have the favorite movie Amelie and his pet. So we want to, our business is taking your pets and reenacting your favorite.
Oh my God! Wait, seriously, it's like, so any movie that has an animal in it, you could actually reenact it.
On a retreat where people come and they learn how to do hugging in the morning, hugging in the afternoon, hugging in groups, hugging singly, and so it's a hugging retreat. How many people are coming?
They're all coming, right. What happens, and we've done this exercise a lot, it's called 3 Favorites. If you want to know how to play it, you can email me and I'll send you the instructions. You can steal it and use it. There's a lot of things that happen in this interaction. One thing that happens, of course, is that you might quit your jobs now and start some of this shit because, and we find this is like, wow, that is an incredible idea, and it happens incredibly simply. So we're going to talk about what happened there and connect this with the other things that I discussed. But before I do, you can hug your partner for them, and then go ahead and grab a seat. Just to unpack a little bit about what's happening and why that's interesting. In this exercise, you're doing a lot of things, actually. The one thing that I think, and this is how I got very interested in this work, by just having a lot of experiences and then reflecting on them, actually. And folks that do applied improv, which is the field, I guess it's a field now, we have conferences, so it's a field that I work in. This is kind of what we do. We play around with stuff and then we kind of look at it and go, wow. And you sort of ask one question that arises all the time, which is, wow, what else could I do with that? And in this experience, I think there's a lot of things going on. So first off, you've got this moment where you walk into this thing and they give you a sheet of paper and you're like, write 3 favorites down. And I have no idea how you approach that. I wasn't out there watching and I can't get into your heads, but I've watched other people do this. And sometimes it's really easy. You're just like, oh yeah, cool, 3 favorites. Other times I watch people kind of go, what's the right answer? And I watch them sort of agonize over it. And actually, I've even watched people sort of cheat. Like, what do you got? Just so weird to me. But that's what happens. And you might think about these 3 favorites on your sheet of paper. Mine are improv, monsters, and robots. Surprise. It's kind of like, this is you. Maybe it's like, it's your agenda. This is the thing you want. This is the thing, this is about you. And the next thing that happens is this guy tells you you have to share it. So you're getting up here and you're kind of going, here's me, here's a little bit of me, here's a little bit of me, a little bit of you too. Ah, great. So you sort of go from this moment of like, I've got this thing, I'm going to now put it here, and I'm going to slowly sort of put it out into the world. And so I love this moment where we do the speed date where people, and you guys totally got into it, where people are like, there's something sort of lovely about seeing and sharing and letting that stuff go. I think we all, and I experience this at least, live in a world where I often encounter or I feel like I have to behave in a way where my ideas are here because I don't want anyone to have them. Because without them, I'm not sure I know who I am. And without them, I'm not sure I've got my basis or my grounding. It's me. So you can't have those things. And I love watching people let go of that. And so that's what you started to do. You started to sort of let go of some of those things. And then comes sort of the magic moment, I think, which is where, and again, this is not rocket science. You probably know this stuff, but it's fun to experience it, which is this moment where you take your stuff and you collide it with somebody else's stuff. And you come up with stuff you would have never thought of before. It's magic. I think it's magic. I think it's remarkable. I think it's surprising. I think it's delightful. And I want to live in a world where that happens all the time. And that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to structure my own life so I can have those moments of surprise and delight happen as much as possible. And that is by sort of putting lots of things out into the world and seeing them as an offer. And we're going to explore this idea of offer in a moment, but we don't have to go too far because you've just done it. You put the offer of yourself out into the world, and you allowed for someone else to see it. And then actually you saw theirs as well. And then there was a combination of offers to come up with, I think, amazing value. This is kind of the 1 + 1 = 3 thing, or the more heads are better than one under the right conditions. And I think some of those conditions are simply being able to let go. And I got very interested in this work, and I think the place I most found this happening in the world was in the world of the theater. And so just to sort of hop around in my chronology, when I was in grad school, I was painting and I was doing stuff. When I was in grad school, I was interested in acting. And I had one really specific problem, which killed me, which was I could not and hated to memorize scripts. Hated it. Still to this day. Like, I have this thing I've got a plan for this. We're already completely off of it. I just hate them. And so, but I was really interested in stories. It's like, I want to tell stories. I want to make stories happen. And one day, and this was seriously totally by accident, I walk into a room. I thought I was having, a rehearsal at this room. It was in the theater department. And these people were making up stories without a script. What are they doing? It's audacious. They were just messing around and they were improvising stories. And I saw this, and that was it. I was completely hooked. And this is 25 years ago. And from that day on, it's the only thing that I want to do if I can do it. It's like, give me other people that want to play in this way, because it allows for these dynamics to happen. And the dynamics are things like letting go of your filters of who you want the world to see you as. Because in improv, there's so much constraint that you kind of can't worry about looking cool or funny or interesting because you don't know what the hell's going to happen next. And I'm interested in that because we get to see people at their real selves. So I got really interested in this improv thing and what they were doing. What are the behaviors that they're doing on stage that allow for this sort of co-creation to happen without a plan? And again, I could talk about it, but that doesn't seem like a great way to learn. So let's do something with it. We're going to show you a piece of improv with Bo and I. And here's what we're going to do, and we'd like to invite you in on. When I watched improv, I thought, wow, these guys are doing so much stuff up there that could be used elsewhere. I love it on stage, but where else could you use it was a question I thought about. So we're going to show you a piece of improv now. Don't know what's going to happen. Whatever it is, it'll be the first time it has ever happened. Whatever we're doing, it will be right now. And what I'd love you to look at and think about are two things. One, what are they doing up here? Because there's some extreme conditions happening in terms of work. They have no plan. They have no script. You like how I talk about us like the third person? It's like they. And they have no idea what's going to happen. They have an expected audience that's going to watch their creative process happen. And they have an expectation, because we've sort of set up some high stakes, we're going to perform for you in this territory, that this is going to be worth watching. So these are sort of some extreme conditions to work under. If you think about your own work and how you make things and put them out in the world, when's the last time you've done it where you don't really know what you're doing and a client is watching you do it, right? So some of you still may have that, but it's pretty extreme. So what I'd love to invite you to do is to simply look at the behaviors that are happening up here, to be able to sort of navigate through these extreme conditions. And then I'm going to ask you to feed that back. Like, what did you see them doing? That's one job. The other is just to be an audience and, laugh gratuitously when, even if it's not funny, because our egos are like super micro thin. So what are we doing? What are we doing here? Yeah.
I had asked several of you to take these once blank slips of paper and write a sentence, a line of dialogue that you say or you hear at your work, true to life. I told you we were going to use them, and that moment is now. So this is a game in the improv world that we call dialogue papers. We have not read these. I have not looked at them. Gary and I in a moment are going to start a scene. From time to time, we're going to pick up these slips of paper, read them out loud, and incorporate them into our scene. So we haven't censored anything. If there's anything lewd or crude in here, that's on you. All right? So to get us started, how about maybe an occupation that one of your grandparents had? True to life. A bookbinder? A bookbinder is our suggestion for this scene. Thank you.
Jedediah,
Ichabod.
I have finished the tome.
Put them on my large oak desk. Now remember what I told you when I gave you this job. I said very seriously, but that's not how we've done it here.
Oh.
Your ideas for bookbinding are out of this world, and I don't know if the village is going to accept it.
I heard the word weave, so I weaved them together.
You were literal.
You said weave. Jedediah, I think I've discovered something amazing.
Tell me.
I had all these loose pages, and they were all around the cabin. And then I saw in the corner something that changed everything.
Tell me.
Pick close to the right. I left it under your desk.
Surprise!
Yes!
Oh. So all this paperwork was a ruse. It was really about this one book that
That's right. I've been working on my magicianship as well.
I love how you bound the pages.
Yes, but you see what I've bound them in.
Yes, you have. You've bound them in some kind of animal skin.
That's right. That's right, not just any animal skin, Jedediah. I don't know if you've seen way up on the top of the peaks outside the village. There's strange animals screaming this: Dutch people mispronouncing English words.
I told you never to go on top of that hill. It's dangerous.
They are.
No one in the village goes up there.
I did. I ventured up there, and they were speaking strange things.
I went up there as a child. And after what I saw, I came back to my parents and I said, "What do you need to accomplish today?" They're doing things up there, man.
Yes, Jedediah. And look, I made drawings because we don't have cameras invented yet. But look, these strange animals that are belittling the Dutch. They secrete from their glands behind their ears this substance, turns furry, and you can bind books with them.
You've done a lot of work on this.
I've thought a lot about it.
Well, you know, as my apprentice,
Yes.
You're a great bookbinder, but it seems you have a passion for these strange creatures that live on the hillside.
I do. I don't know what they're called. I do have a passion for them, however.
I believe there's a way to describe them, and that is video.
What's a strange word coming out of your mouth?
I hear them saying that word up there.
Video.
I went up there as a child. They were like chanting video.
Sounds like
video,
something from the
video,
future.
video.
I don't know. Video. Well, Jedediah, I have bad news.
Yes?
I've been so moved by these strange beasts speaking things that I don't understand. I've decided to join them. I'm going to go live up the top of the mountain and learn as much as I can. So I wanted to say this to you before I leave. Ding dong. I'm sorry I've been harboring such resentment of your power.
I mean, you may leave. If you're not interested in bookbinding, that is fine, but don't call me a ding-dong.
I'm sorry.
Well, let me just say, can you size this one bigger, please? With this new leather you've
I thought you heard about my other job.
I feel it's missing some pages.
I'll size it. Listen, I don't want to leave on bad terms.
All right.
I'll tell you what. Every now and then I'll come down from the mountain and I'll show you what I'm learning. Perhaps it'll help you with your bookbinding business.
Very well.
You don't seem too pleased.
I'm still hurt by the ding-dong.
I understand. Well, listen, I'll come by and help you with your sizing later then.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I want to tell you something. My grandfather was a bookbinder. And I didn't tell you this before, but he gave me some advice. And I'd like to pass it on to you, Jedediah.
I'd like to hear it.
It's a question. It's a question for you to ponder.
Okay.
Don't answer it, just think about it.
All right.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to that? I didn't think to ask you, and now I am.
Very wise.
Okay. Thank you. That was excellent. You're a great audience. You just laughed when you're supposed to. Perfect. So, here's our question. We wanted you to do some work on this as well. What did you see them, we'll talk about them, it's hard for me to talk about me that way. So, what did you see them doing that allowed them to navigate through those conditions of all those things we talked about? Yeah, you had your hand up. What did you see?
You say yes and, you receive it and incorporate it
Great.
into your idea and continue the ideas.
So carried on and continued the idea. Excellent. Now, how about for you?
As soon as you said Jedediah, he went on with that, and you knew what era you were in, that you weren't modern bookbinders.
Right. Again, these are offers. Let's keep this word going. So everything that happens up on stage and in life is an offer. And you've got some choices about what you can do with it. So the very first offer that we got in this scene, did anyone know what it was? What was the very first offer that happened in this scene? Bookbinding. It had nothing to do with us. It had to do with our audience. So our audience is inputting this immediately. And the very first offer that happens is bookbinding. And then the second offer was to accept that in some way. Accept it meaning you recognize it and you do something with it. And so improvisers are doing a lot of things up there. Here's how they co-create, and we're going to focus on one of them. First of all, they approach this uncertainty with an attitude. It's an attitude of fit and well. And here's what that means. In our minds, we are trained, because we do this often, to say to ourselves, I have no idea what's going to happen up here, but it's going to be great. That's a fit and well attitude to approaching uncertainty. The opposite of that is approaching uncertainty from, I have no idea what's going to happen, but it's going to suck. And that sort of mindset is a beginning that no one sees out on stage, but I think hopefully you experience it. So they're approaching this co-creation and uncertainty from that place. They're also noticing everything. Like our lifeline up here is to be able to notice everything that's happening. So Jedediah, it's like Bo's got it. I noticed that. If Bo is thinking about, wow, what am I going to do in this scene? Bookbinding, what do I know about bookbinding? Am I a bookbinder? Like if any of that stuff's going on for him, and he's not present and focusing on the other person, our scene is going to get lost. So they have to notice more. They have to let go of their agenda. I don't know if, Bo, you thought that this would be a modern bookbinding or the era, but whatever it was, we'd have to let go of that agenda to be changed by the other person. So these dynamics are in play. And improv is a place to look at them, but these dynamics are in play everywhere. This is what I believe happens when people get together. And when you can create some of these conditions, you can start to co-create with each other. And this last thing that we started to talk about is this idea of seeing everything as an offer. So improvisers don't have time to go, is that a good idea or a bad idea? They only have time to ask one question, or two questions really. What can I do with that? Or what else can I do with that? That's it. They can't decide whether it's good or bad or move on. Now, what happens on stage is that you can do a number of things with offers. Acquiesce to them, block them, or accept them. When you acquiesce to an offer, you just go, sure, great. When you block them, you say no. And when you accept, as you said, you recognize it and you do something with it. So this is what's happening in improv. And I think I got interested in this work early on in my life. Again, so improvisers are asking what else? How do they see everything as an offer? This is what they do. They ask what else? And again, this way of working, of co-creating, and I didn't know this at the time, but reflecting back, this goes to something that happened for me when I was really, really, really young, and it involved our second topic, this idea of monsters. So when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I would have these terrible, terrible, terrible nightmares. And these things would be really vivid. Giant monsters reaching in my bed. I thought I was asleep, but it was the dream. One of those things where it's like, wait, am I awake, am I not? But there's a giant hand grabbing me. Hopefully I'm asleep. And I'd have these terrible dreams. And at the time, I would wake up and then I would go find my father in the other room. And my dad would say, you know what, come on downstairs. So he'd pick me up and we'd go down into the kitchen and he'd put in some cinnamon toast. And then he brought out a pencil and paper, lots of paper, and lots of pencils. And he had me draw these nightmares, these monsters. And I know this happened because I have the actual drawings, which you're seeing now. These are drawings that I did when I was 6 or 7, and we would do this in this really co-creative, improvised way. We would sit down and he would say, what is this? And what's going on here? And we'd start to talk about them and draw them. And these amazing images that to this day, it's so cool to look at things you've done in the past because you can depersonalize yourself from. You're like, God, that's really cool. Who did it? You're like, I did. Wow. And the interaction was just as important as the making of them. We named them. So this, you can't see it. It's really small down here. But this is my dad's handwriting. And it says, really obviously, lamppost monster. And it's like, wow. And he got some of the brunt of this too, so I found this one. I was like, it's not all loving and wonderful, warm and fuzzy robots. So we made drawings together, and we co-created drawings together. And one day, my dad, and here's what he was doing. He was seeing these things as an offer. Because here's what he did. One day he said, you know, if you draw these things, you can erase them. And he had me turn the pencil over and start to get rid of my drawings. And so I had found some of these things that have like sort of halfway drawn and erased. And the truth is that after a period of time, my nightmares started to diminish. So he's using art to co-create with me, to help me with something. And this idea of making things together, seeing things as an offer, and now using art to help really stuck for me. And so I kept drawing monsters. They became really a huge part of my life. I doodled all the time in school. I got in trouble because I wasn't paying attention, but actually I was listening better when I was drawing. And so I started drawing monsters, and I kept drawing monsters, and I kept drawing monsters, and they just kept coming out of me. And then I got this opportunity, a wonderful opportunity as I was doing it to even make them sort of bigger. And this is a piece that's downtown. This is just big monsters that are on a parking garage. And I got really interested in this work. And then one day, I was working on a piece. This isn't the piece. This is this happened afterwards, but it was the sort of first version of this. And it was a big painting in my garage. And one of the kids in the neighborhood came in, and he started to do this thing that I think changed the way I thought about putting art out into the world. He started to narrate the story of my painting. And he said things like, oh yeah, see this guy? He's reaching for the clock because time has run out on this small little bomb that he's holding over here that's going to explode, and the entire world is going to be destroyed, and he's this maniacal. I was like, what are you talking about? But whatever it was so much more interesting than anything I was thinking for this thing. It was like, wow, this is what happens if you allow yourself to potentially see your piece as just the beginning of an offer for other people to co-create with you. And so I got very hooked on this idea, and I started to make other pieces. And the way to understand this idea is to sort of see something in action, actually. So we'll have another micro experience. Can I invite you up on stage, Celie and Bo? You want to grab those 2 chairs? So this idea of, we're going to have Celie and Bo come up here, and they're just going to simply sit on these chairs. And I'm going to invite you just to watch them and see what happens. And I say that with quotes, to see what happens. I'm going to instruct them to do nothing. So they're going to do nothing. And I'll just say some things. I'm going to say some prompts about their relationship. These are 2 strangers on a subway, late at night, heading home. This is the king and queen reviewing their processional, the armies of the nations before them. These are 2 astronauts ready for liftoff. These are 2 strangers in a bathroom where the partitions have been removed. This is a couple at their final divorce counseling. And these are two parents proudly watching their daughter in her ballet recital. Great, you guys can relax. Give me huge hands. I'll just ask you, what did you see? What did you see up there as they were doing that? Did anybody actually see things behind? Yeah, what did you see?
The backgrounds were changed.
Right.
Their clothing were changed.
So their clothing changed, their background changed. This phenomena, this idea, giving them incomplete work, giving them things that invites them to participate, is really liberating for me. Because here's what it means. I don't have to work so hard. I don't. So how can you do this and invite your audience in to be part and co-create things with you? This is what I got really interested in doing, and I can do it in improv. That seems sort of interesting and easier than doing it with my visual art. I started to do things like this. I would create a show that I would put up in a gallery, but I wouldn't title any of my paintings. And I would invite the audience to come and with Post-it notes and just stick what they think this thing should be titled. And whichever one gets sort of picked, sort of we had an online kind of like, you decide, and people did, then that person would get a t-shirt with this on or something, we'd give them something. And that's the name of that would be the name of the piece. So this one, for example, I didn't know what this was, but I do now, and it's much better than anything I would ever thought of. This is gluten intolerance. Right? See, that's sweet, because that's the kind of moment, like, I want that surprise all the time. I do. I want that to happen. I want to start it and then be surprised by what other people can bring to it. And you were surprised too. I mean, I love that moment when you kind of go, oh my God, thank you. And it's a gift. This is another piece that I did last year at the World Domination Summit. I had this idea that I would give away 36 pieces of art. And you can have that piece as long as you commit to making something inspired by it. It's yours, but you have to make something inspired by it. So this is a drawing of a robot, appropriately. And then this person went on to, here's the first 2 panels of a 30-page comic strip. Or this is a painting up here. It's not greatest shot, but it has dogs in it. And she was like, yeah. And she made these sort of beautiful dog figures from it. So this idea of using monsters and art to invite your audience in is another way you can see everything as an offer. It's another how. How do you do it? Well, do this. Invite your audience in. And this can keep perpetuating. And so lastly, robots. So I wanted to sort of overcommit to this idea, but I didn't really know how. And at On Your Feet, again, we do this work with businesses, and every year, because I happen to be one of the co-owners of this company, I get to make something and give it to our clients and friends. And so one year I made a journal. It was a co-creation journal that had little prompts in them every now and then. And this was one of them. So blank pages, but then something like this would show up. And it says, if you can't see it, it says, imagine that you go through your entire day followed by a giant invisible robot that protects you, defends you, and gives you outrageous compliments. And we just sent this to people, and it had other things in this book. And the weirdest thing happened, which is I started getting calls and emails from people saying this: you can't believe what my robot said to me today. He said I was so smart in that meeting. Or, I mean, this sort of monologue, this narrative. And so I was like, shit, there's something really cool here. You make something so people can have a conversation with themselves. And we thought next step was, you got to make the robot. You have to make it. So we did. I did. And we thought about this idea, which is, and it was very hard to find something to make them on, and we found dominoes. Because dominoes are this beautiful, wonderful, tactile thing. When you hold a domino, you're like, there's something weird happens to your body. You're like, oh. It's that warm and fuzzy thing you said about robots. So I started to make these things, and I first made a bunch of joy bots just to do this. It's like, keep it with you, it's going to give you an outrageous compliment. And people were like, yeah, it did, here's what happened. And then I thought, well, what else could you do with this thing? So I started to leave them in cities all over the world. And they have little instructions on them, and they just say, take a picture of something that brings you joy, send it to me, and then leave it for someone else to find. And I was a total experiment. I was like, I don't know, what if you throw this offer out into the world, what will happen? A lot, actually, will happen. And people start to send you stuff like, what brings you joy? Beer. There's lots of pictures of beer. Here's one that was left in Portland. Someone found it and their little fuzzy hippo, and then it ended up in Sacramento, and their cat showed up in my inbox. And that thing is still out there doing its thing. And I've tried to leave hundreds of them, and when I travel with my work, I try to leave them everywhere I can. Here's one where his favorite thing is his skateboard, and it's just such a beautiful, lovely shot of this kid. So these are ways to discover and use art as a way to connect with your audience, but also understand a bit more about them as well. So I started to overcommit like crazy to this thing. I was like, love bots, advice bots, caffeine bots. Seriously, my wife's a knitter, I made knitting bots. And I just was like, I'm gonna make a lot of these things and see what happens. And there's a big yes bot, which seems appropriate. And I made them big, I put them on different substructures. And then one day I had this thought, which is, well, who else needs help with these things? And that's when I contacted Katie Dunn, who's in the back. Hi, Katie. Can you wave for us? Thank you. Sorry, I won't do anything else to isolate you in this. That's all I'm going to do. Katie Dunn is the art therapist at Randall Children's Hospital. And this idea of giving kids who are admitted into hospitals a brave bot became one that we thought about together and started to do. And so I started to make these and give them to kids at the hospitals. And the stories that have come from that, the offers that have been accepted by these kids have been remarkable and incredibly gratifying, and they make me think, I want to keep doing this forever. And so, for example, this is Ava. She needed her Brave Bot to help with her insulin injections, and so she has to give them to herself. And so eventually she was like, I won't do it without my Brave Bot, and it helped her get through that. And the stories like that are coming from Randall and now also at Dornbecker Children's Hospital and others in Spain, over in New Haven, Connecticut, and other places have really been remarkable. And then I thought, well, what else could you do with these things? And I got a call from Boulder who said, come and make them big. And I said, all right, that's an offer. And these are bots that have questions embedded in their design so that people will then answer them by taking sort of selfies or having other people take pictures of them. And then they answer these questions by posting just a hashtag botjoy. So again, I don't know jack about social media, but I was like, let's try this. And it was crazy, the things that started to come through. People are taking pictures with themselves and they're telling us the things that inspire them, like their daughter and their teacher and their art. You know, people, what brings her joy is their sister, and all this stuff gets posted, and I get to sit back and just watch people accept offers all the time, and it's just been incredibly gratifying. We did a piece up at Dornbecker. Of course, we got Hannah, at least, is here. Where are you, Hannah? Can you give us a Hannah? Hannah? There she is. Sorry, I won't isolate you either. But Hannah from Dornbecker, we put Brave Bots up on the oncology ward there, and kids now get to interact with them as well. I just got back from Spain at a hospital there as well. Who helps you be brave is what that says. So the last thing about this is simply what I realized very quickly is I am a bottleneck. I cannot make enough of these things. They seem to be helpful. What else could I do? And this, to me, in some ways, has been sort of the biggest artistic breakthrough, which is 3 years ago, I posted this video, which simply says, steal this idea. Here's how you can do it. Here's how you can make bots. Do it and see what happens. And I was scared to do it because I was like, someone's going to steal my idea. And then I thought, that's just what I asked them to do. So that was an easy conversation. So here's what happens when you launch an offer like that. Hundreds and hundreds of people accept it. And they recognize it and they do something with it. And there's curriculums and kids down in San Jose and over on the East Coast and over in the UK that are thinking about these questions. Who in my community needs help? What kind of bot might help them? What design would I need to execute that? And how do I get that to those people? So for example, these are writer's block bots that are getting sent to J.K. Rowling. Another group were like, you know who needs help in my community? They're like, well, what's my community? The world. So you know who needs help? And I'm, anybody, any answer could come up, but this is a 4th grade class. They're like, you know who needs help in our world? Astronauts. Yeah, they need some help being more adventurous. So they sent, I don't know if this is going to happen, but they sent bots to NASA to see if they can get them in their hands to go up. So the co-creation that's happening with the audience around some of this stuff is just killer. Here's another whole program that happened over at Yale with people making bots to give to kids at that children's hospital. Here's another one, which are peace bots that are happening over in Raleigh. And I get to watch these things grow, just like an improv scene. I get to watch people co-create, and it's remarkable. And it's really gotten to the point where these are other artists. So it's not just, these are people that they make art for a living. That's what scared me. I was like, what if other artists do it? And they did, and they're really cool, you know? So this is in Japan, this is in France, these are in Spain, these are working artists that are making bots. It's been so gratifying. And the thing I take from this is ask this question. If you want to see everything as an offer, ask, how can this help? The thing that I am doing, the thing that I am making, it's created so much amazing, I don't want to say opportunity, it's just surprise and delight and new things by asking these things. So here are 3 things you can do to see everything as an offer. You can ask this idea of, what else could I do with that? You can invite your audience into your process and actually make things that are incomplete and invite them to complete them. And keep asking this question, which is, and how can this thing help? For me, it's been a delightful journey. It continues to be. I wake up and I get surprised every day. And just to finish, I would like to share first this quote, because I think this embodies it. It's from Keith Johnstone. He says, there are those who prefer to say yes and those who prefer to say no. Those that say yes are rewarded by the adventures they have, and those that say no are rewarded, same word, interestingly enough, by the safety they retain. And his observation is that far more no-sayers in the world than yes-sayers. And I suppose maybe part of and Keith Johnstone is an amazing mind that you should learn about and read about from the world of improv and totally applicable to everyday life. And I suppose my mission is just to help maybe tip the balance a bit, to get more yes-sayers happening out there. And I'm going to start right now with you. So here is my offer for you. 2 things before you leave. One is I want to give you something, and then I want to get something from you. Here's the give. On your way out, you will find volunteers with little boxes, and those little boxes are your own, hand-painted, one-of-a-kind. Like I said, this is number 31,828 out of infinity, Joybot that I'd love to give to you on your way out. And my ask is that you continue to help me understand how this stuff works and co-create with me. So when your Joybot gives you an outrageous compliment, and it won't right away maybe, or maybe it will, who knows? You gotta let it sit there and perch and watch you. When it does, I'd love to know what it says. And all you have to do is simply use that technology stuff that we're all enamored with and say, here's what my Joybot said. And just, if you throw the hashtag BotJoy on it, on any platform, I'll probably see it. And my ask from you is to help keep this stuff going. So if you're interested, and if you have time, because we're getting close, I'd like to make one more offer, which is Katie has so generously brought supplies to make a Brave Bot for the kids at Randall Children's Hospital. And they're easy to make, and you sort of can't make a mistake. It's like improv. You use whatever happens. The pen blobs out, that's the head. But that's going to happen in the back as soon as I say goodbye, which I'm going to say now. So thank you.
Getting too into this now.
One of the Brave Bots.